So if we think about the activities that that would be important, across that pathway, then I've started there with the at the top left, the athletes are enjoying themselves. So that's fundamental throughout all of this. And then as we progress on, well, we might start to make some tests and measurements. We might do some field testing on the track. Look at how, for example, how people jump, some of their sort of lower limb characteristics. And then as we progress up there as higher level performers and higher level in investments in terms of their time and commitment, it might be that we start to collect some of our information to understand the impacts of training, for example, in the physiology or in the biomechanics laboratory. So we need to factor in, if we're planning training, the age and stage, and to make that appropriate. And that then leads us into, we showed in that original model there, which we sort of critiqued and said, it's just about volume and intensity. And we saw that came to a peak performance in the competition phase. But we can have more than one of those competition periods. And so it's probably, this would be a good time to give that some thought as to, how and when that might be appropriate. And so we're going to have a look at a model here from World Athletics, from their coach ed programs, from Peter Thompson is a prolific author of resources from World Athletics. So here's some ideas about how we sort of work out that the athlete development stage, so that we can to help us putting that plan together. And right, so I think we'll understand that this first part of the diagram quite comfortably. Then, so we have chronological age along the top. Then some thoughts on the maturational stage of the athlete, early through to late developing athletes. And that then perhaps gives us an idea about to estimate biological age. So we'll look at a couple of examples in a minute of athletes in the 15 to 17 age group. But if you're a late maturer at age 15, then your biological age is perhaps remains in the sort of the 12 to 15 bracket, or an early maturer, then you could be more represented by the 17 to 19 age group. And that will then inform some of our decision making. So let's just sort of build the model up there. Okay. Next question to ask is, do we have some of our basic skills that would underpin athletic development, athletic performance? And there's a range of these in terms of the sort of the language of athlete development. ABCs, the most common ones: agility, balance, coordination. We might also consider speed as part of that. And so, do we have those basic skills? So that's a yes/no question. And then we factor in the training age of the athlete. So, how many years have we spent training in athletics? And we can complete our model there. Okay, so if we've answered yes to the questions there, and we've got, if it's a yes, but we've got less than 2 years of training experience, then we probably wouldn't periodize and organize training in that way. Likewise, if it's a no answer, then that takes us straight to no periodization. Okay, if we've got 5 to 9 years of experience, then we've got some options there. In theory, this athlete could perhaps plan a double periodized year, which is perhaps bring us to 2 peaks. So perhaps an indoor and an outdoor season as one example. So let's follow this through with a couple of examples. So here we have a 15 to 17 year old athlete. Okay, we decided that they're a late maturer. So their biological age is a little behind their chronological age, but they've got a couple of years of experience in athletics there. So the model there gives us some ideas that we could plan a peak performance, a periodized training year. And if we contrast that with athlete, same chronological age, average maturation, so their biological age probably matches pretty close to their chronological age. They've got the basic skills, but they've got more. They've got a greater training age. So they've been training for over 5 years. So that perhaps gives them some options in terms of a double periodized year. So I think what the examples here sort of show us is that if we're working with young performers, if we give some greater consideration to their age and their stage of development, then it might help us in terms of sort of setting some of the goals and some of the planning for their for the year, and perhaps helping temper some of their their ambitions about what competitions that they would like to do well in, and how realistic that might be. So one reflection when putting that diagram together was that some of the coaching work that I've done, as well as working like with the guys in the Talent Hub and on the World Class program. I've done quite a few of the club run sessions for England Athletics. So these are all mature performers, but often, we're often introducing the basic skills to mature performers. So that sort of challenges the idea of of the periodized year for some of our sort of club run performers. So some ideas there about periodization, and then we're putting the plan together. We've decided on this general preparation, specific preparation, and so on, and then we're putting the week's training together, which was the micro cycle. So I've got an 8-stage process here to give us some ideas about how we might put that together. And this is some of Gunter Lang's work. Gunter he's German and works for World Athletics in coach education and development. So Gunter talks first about you need to work out the profile of your athletes. That takes us back to that technical, tactical, physical, and mental profile of the performer. We then need to work out what that training phase is. Actually, as I just said, is it general preparation, or is it more specific, or are we right into a competition phase of the year? So work out that. Think about in terms of how we're expressing training. So what are the units that we're reporting? So is it miles? Is it kilometers? Is it meters? Is it kilograms? And so on. And then what's the amount of each of those? So how many? What's the mileage? Is one example. But then we need to consider how we're going to load up and achieve that. Achieve the amount of that unit, achieve that volume for the training week. Get that down on paper, on our spreadsheet, or on our app. And so we've got the day's training for each particular day. We've got that down, and then we work out what is the individual volume and the intensity of the different training sessions each day, and then some method to actually work out what the impact of that might be. And we'll see shortly. We'll have a look at some methods that we can do to work out how training might impact on the athlete from some of the sort of simple measurements that we might be able to make. Okay, but then we need to then sort of work out do a bit of reflection on that and give it some thought. So, right, so we've got our plan down for the week. Right, is it an appropriate plan for for the training phase that we're in, and does it match the goals of our athletes? All right, yeah, is it age and stage appropriate? So, is it a training week that's appropriate for, for example, a late maturing 15-year-old from our earlier example? Okay, is there enough recovery written into that? All right, is there enough variety? And that's what we mean by that in terms of, perhaps for really invested senior performers, in terms of variety in there for, as you said, for highly invested senior performers, then that could be the key elements of the demands of their event that are met. For young athletes, that could be just actually a range of activities that's that's going to retain their interest and so that they're enjoying their athletics. And actually, are we then ready for that week's training? So that's what I mean by preconditions. So are we robust enough to handle the volume, the intensity, the training load, as as just one example. And then we plan the training sessions. So here's I've redrawn a table here from by Jack Daniels, who's a physiologist. I'm sure many of you are familiar with his textbook, Daniels Running Formula, and actually that's one of those bits of software we flagged up. That's also linked to Daniel's work. But so in terms of organising training, what we have here then. It's probably our sort of four principal methods in terms of like running, walking, athletic training. Aside from strength and conditioning and sort of this other preparatory type of work that we would do around this and help us get ready for this. There's our long, steady distance training tempo, which we can do as as a continuous training session, or perhaps tempo type intervals through into intervals, and then the highest intensity sort of here we just distinguish them as repetitions, but we probably often use some of that language interchangeably. And we can see that some of our physiological landmarks that help us understand how we have an impact on and why we might choose different types of training to go into our microcycle, for the training session. So the long, slow, easy stuff is below the lactate turn point. So that's low levels of steady state lactate. So very much aerobic, and this is where we would develop endurance. And this can be sort of quite extensive running, up to 2 hours or more. And we can see the sort of some training intensities that are linked to this, and we can distinguish these in a number of ways. Perhaps some blood lactate measures, which are less readily available to us. Fractions of heart rate, maximum heart rate, are pretty straightforward for us to calculate. And like the lactate, percentage of maximum oxygen uptake certainly allows sort of greater precision, but again is perhaps less readily available to all athletes and coaches. Our tempo training, it takes place around the lactate turn point or just above, and that's perhaps optimized by sort of an all-out steady state run of 20 minutes, or intervals of shorter durations, but around that intensity, and so on. So up through to intervals that are around the maximum oxygen uptake, or all-out sprinting over very short durations. So these are some of the factors that would go then into planning our individual training sessions for the week. either side of those charts there on the screen, preceded by a warm-up and followed by a cool-down as sort of the components that are going into those sessions. Okay, as an acronym there, ramp warm-up. So ramp as in raising heart rate and temperature, and sort of neural activity, which takes into activation and mobilization of the key muscle groups and sort of planes of movement that we're going to work across and work through. And the P for potentiate, or perhaps to prime, which is doing some perhaps quite high intensity work over a short duration, just so that we've really sort of got our oxygen uptake, our oxygen kinetics up to speed, ready for the particular training session that we have planned.